Hello, and you've joined me here with Mr. Shinn. Now, we all love a good bit of marketing blurb, but cutting through it sometimes is a bit tricky. And so, while we're on a surf trip here with Mr. Shinn, I thought it a canny opportunity to get some real-world nitty-gritty about his new range of boards. Now, you'll have to excuse me, I've only got one mic here because I'm not used to having any friends. But today I've got a list of stuff that I thought pertinent to ask him with regard to the boards that he's designed in the past and these three new ranges here. So, hello Mr. Shinn, have you had a nice break so far?
Yes, been a fantastic trip. Not too windy, but lots of good surf.
Yeah. Sweet. Perfect. Right, well, let's get into it. First of all, I would like to say, on behalf of everybody who loves your work in the past, it's lovely to see you back designing boards because there's a lot of reverence for what you do and you seem to be pretty good at it on the whole. It's been 3 years since you brought any new designs to market. Have you been doing work in the background in those 3 years? How much prototyping have you actually been doing since the end of the last boards and the beginning of these new boards?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here, thank you. I'm really stoked to show the new boards. As you say, it has been 3 years, but I haven't been sat still for 3 years. It's 3 years that we didn't bring any boards to the market, not 3 years that we didn't make any prototypes and testing. So we have been through a lot of boards. I think the development of boards generally, you have the performance of the board, you have the construction, and you have the technology that you make it with. And generally, when one of those factors changes, it drives the others to catch up. And I would say at this stage, it's definitely a construction phase that we're in, where we have some new materials and some new ways to work with it. And it's led to a kind of a step forward that's brought the performance behind it. So I'm particularly excited about the introduction of basalt fibre into the Baracus and the Monka here. This is a naturally occurring fibre. It works a little bit like carbon, but let's say on a scaled down level. The problem with carbon is it can make the board feel very stiff and overreactive, too nervous, too harsh. And the basalt, it's improving the stiffness, improving the liveliness, but we don't lose that really nice plush feeling that I've always worked for in the boards. That they're smooth through the chop, super easy to handle, and yet have good performance still.
Yeah. And thanks, you actually answered my second question, which was on the technology, so that's that out of the way. There are less boards in the range than years previous. What is the reason for that? And, is it a range of use type scenario where everybody that knew the range of old can find something in this range? Or is it a streamlining of who you are and where you want to go?
I think that there's an awful lot of noise in this industry, and as we improve the boards, the technology, the performance, we introduce boards that have a much wider audience. So we don't really need so many boards because each board does everything better. However, I've also integrated it more into the range. So, for instance, the Monka, the smaller sizes are quite suitable for lighter riders, children or women. We come through the mid-sizes, which are general for all-round freestyle, and the larger sizes you would probably describe as a light wind twin tip. But they're all contained in that one Monka range, because at the end of the day, if you're small or large or light wind, it's still freeride, and that's a freeride board. So I think it just simplifies things in that way. So we really focus the range down into the Monka, which is our all-round freeride board, the Dalton, which is an enduro high-performance board, and the Baracus, which is big air in its smaller sizes and freestyle in its larger sizes.
Right, it's not often easy to see in videos like this just how vivid the graphics and the graphical work on these boards is. But I can assure you, stood here, they're extremely vibrant. Is there a lot of work that goes into the actual graphical and printing design on these things compared to some of the designs you've done in the past? Because they do look quite a bit sharper and sort of more striking.
There's many shortcuts you can take for the look of the board. There's many technologies, different ways to print. They have advantages and disadvantages. I do like a board that looks unique. I like a board that without a logo on it, you can still see which brand it is. So when we were developing these boards, we really wanted to make the board very striking. And we decided that still to this day, if you really want to have high intensity color, there is nothing better than screen print. And although the design may look fairly simple, it's actually quite complicated to do it across different sizes and different boards. But I think it's worth it. The twin tip market is quite discerning. And if you want to make a quality product, I don't think you can cut corners.
Yeah. So I get quite a few questions from people asking me directly, if I loved the Absinthe, which board in the new range is the one that I should buy? And you know, with the range changing and moving, overlapping in different areas, and obviously the sport's come a long way in discipline in 3 years as well. So where would you point them?
The Absinthe was a very all-round board. It did many things. And I think that most of its riding characteristics have been absorbed between the Dalton and the Baracus. If it's boosting you're after, the Baracus is clearly the choice here. It has more grip, it's faster, it's more tactile. So if what you want to do is boost, then Baracus is clearly the solution here. The Dalton, you can see we have the spread toe high modulus carbon. It has a lightweight Paulovnia core. It retains the essence of the Absinthe, but I would say it's a little bit more all-round in that aspect. If you're looking for a board that on a flat day you can boost big airs, if there's small waves you can turn on them and carve, and just an amazing feeling, then I would say the Dalton. So I don't think you can say this is the new Absinthe. It's kind of morphed into other things.
Cool. Right, so on the old Absinthe, it had a balsa core, but that's now gone from the range, and it's been, in fact, all of the cores have changed because there used to be a standard Paulovnia core. Is that right?
Yes.
And can you talk us through what happened to balsa and what happened to the standard Paulovnia cores and where you've gone and why?
Wood is a natural material, obviously, and the speed that it grows dictates the density of the wood. So if you take a wood like oak, it grows very slowly and it's very, very dense, but it's heavy. If you take a wood like bamboo or balsa, it's growing very fast indeed, and it means it's correspondingly low density, so it's light. As an industry, we've used Paulovnia a lot because it has such a nice balance between the density and no weight. It grows fairly fast, it's easy to be sustainable, and it's been pretty much an industry standard for years. Because we were searching for lower weight with the Absinthe in the past, we looked to use balsa, a lighter wood, but the balsa was, on its own, it's too soft and it's too fragile. So we were mixing the balsa with Paulovnia to create a hybrid core that was lighter but still durable. In the last years, we've had very, very humid conditions where the wood is grown, normally in the east, and it means the Paulovnia has been growing very fast. And this has led to a new grade of Paulovnia, light grade. And this is less dense than standard Paulovnia, but it's still very consistent. The grain in the wood is consistent, and we don't have unexplained breakages, which with balsa or bamboo you do, because if you have a very humid period, it grows very fast and there's a extremely low density part in the wood. If we go back to our example of a hardwood oak, it's growing very slow. So if there's 3 months of rain and humidity, it doesn't grow fast enough to create a problem in the core. So this new grade of Paulovnia Light has really given us a lot more options because it is lighter, it is consistent, and it still performs the same way as the old Paulovnia.
Right, this one I'm going to read from my phone because it's a tricky one. Something completely new. the Baracus. Now, this is a specific genre that you've not really targeted before. What's had to change in your general recipe to realise this? And should we expect it to ride like your normal style of boards?
If we go back 5-6 years, high performance kiteboarding was mainly freestyle. Boots, unhook riding, and the boards were geared towards that. And over the last years, big air has become the de facto area of high performance kiteboarding. So clearly you're looking for something a little bit different between a big air board and a freestyle board. Some years ago, I wasn't so interested because the only people doing big air were the absolute pros. You know? And this is not whilst I love making kiteboards, this is a business, and making something that is not sellable was not interesting for me. But now I see that most kiteboarders are aspiring to big air, some small kite loops, or just boosting. So it's a market segment that I think is worth exploring. And with Baracus, we started with a completely clean sheet. So it's not a development of a board that went in the past, it's something new. And we were looking for a board that is extremely fast through the water, extremely easy to hold edge grip, even with massive amounts of power, and has a really solid hook when you want to jump, letting the kite to go higher, which will obviously make you go higher. And that's where Baracus came from. And I think we've done a pretty good job. It's really amazing how much grip this board has and how fast it is through the water.
How easy would you say it is to ride? So if somebody's got, I've ridden some pro rider twin tips, and they're great for 10 or 15 minutes of hard charging, but then your hand starts to go on your knee and you start puffing and panting and your knees start coming apart and you have to go in for a break. And your boards have always been famous for the kind of thing that you rig up, go out, you can charge around for hour after hour, and they kind of just keep the energy in the tank. They don't burn you out. If this is your iteration of big air and the kind of loadings that everyday riders are taking these days, what makes this different to the sort of normal, standard, sort of super grippy, stiff big air boards that everybody else does?
At the end of the day, kiteboarding has to be fun. That's why we do it, for fun. So when I was developing the board, yes, the performance is important, but also the comfort and the fun factor is equally important. And I had that in mind all the way. The introduction of the Basel gave me a lot more opportunities, and we ended up with Baracus, something I haven't done for many, many years, and we've gone away from the constant curve rocker and gone to a three-stage rocker. So we have more radius in the tips, flatter in the center, and more radius in the other tip. The board is supremely comfortable to ride. It eats the chop much better than you would expect, as it is comparatively stiff. The stiffness is important because if you land hard, you don't want the flex to invert, causing the fins to catch and you're going to crash. So it was a challenge to make a board that's stiff enough for hard landings, but still comfortable through the chop. But I think we've done it. And an example, last week I was with my wife in Egypt on a kite trip, and we just took one Baracus between us. She was riding it for general freeride, and I was riding it for big air, and we were both extremely comfortable on the same board.
That leads me on to my next question. I've ridden this thing quite a bit. Now, my stock size of twin tip, I don't tend to go by the length much, I always go by the width. And my stock size twin tip is 42 wide, and everything that I've ridden in the past that's been below that has been really limited in early planing, upwind ability. It has to be lit, and even when it is lit, 40 wide to me is skittery. It doesn't have the broad range through the water that the bigger boards do. 136 by 40, when you first told me, I was skeptical. I scoffed at it. I said, Mark, it's too small. It's going to be a nightmare. You're not going to be able to sell it. And I had to eat my words. Now, for those of you who are watching this, how would you convince somebody that 136 by 40 is actually a realistic size to go and order from a shop? Because to my mind, it's still way too small. I know better now, but what would you say to somebody who'd say that, yeah, I need the 42 or I need the 43 wide one, as they would traditionally do?
That's a very good question. The change in the rocker and the outline for this board has made a big difference. So it's very efficient, which helps you to get a lot of grip, but it is also efficient through the water. But it's a big airboard, so generally you're not riding a big airboard underpowered, because you're not going to go big if you're underpowered. So it's a little bit of a compromise. But you know, the freeride boards, a bit of extra rail length is really helpful. But on the big air board, you need to be able to control the amount of power you have. So we have gone shorter, we have gone narrower, and so long as you have some power in the kite, it'll be fine. And when you have a fast, efficient board, you can actually generate power in the kite with apparent wind. So it doesn't have that super slow, sticky feeling in lighter winds.
No. Okay. And if I can ask, I'm what, 79 kilos, 80 kilos at the moment, and you've got another 10 kilos or something on top of me. Would you, I mean, what size Baracus would you ride? And what sort of weight would you recommend is the maximum size for this 136 by 40?
I don't think there is a maximum weight for it. If I was going to be riding big air kiting, I would ride the 136 by 40. And if you look at the competitors doing the King of the Air and the GK Big Air events, they're also nearly all on the same size board.
Every rider, every weight?
Pretty much everyone seems to be at around this 136 by 40 size. It just seems to be the magic combination. Yep. So obviously, if you're 110 kilos, you're going to need a bit more power to ride it than someone of 70 kilos. But the way that it works is the same. So I think if you want to do pure big air, then the 136 by 40 is probably the one you're going to choose. If you want to mix it a little bit with freestyle, then the 140 by 41.5 is probably a better choice, but you will lose a little bit of the big air performance.
Yeah, it has kind of blown my mind as to just how practical in wind range that 136 by 40 is, because you can get away with marginal winds getting back upwind, and it's just a lovely board to ride. It's blown me away. I would never choose a board that small. And like you said about the contest, everybody on the beach had the same size board. It's absolutely mental, but it just seems to work. Okay, right. Now I'd like to talk to you about the fin adjustment system. This is something that I've never seen before, and I've been quite surprised with how it works. It's specific to the Baracus, this, as I understand. Can you tell us what it is, and when we should be using it, and what sort of effect it's going to have?
Yeah, the Baracus has our new system called the dynamic fin positioning system. There are various ways and techniques in a board you can add extra grip, so extra ability to hold power. The problem is, if you make a dedicated channel or a dedicated fin, it's always a compromise. You're always giving something up to gain that. Normally you're giving up light wind performance or freestyle performance, but there is a price to pay. So I was looking for a way that when you're super powered, you can hold the power and the edge better, but then in less wind, you're not compromised by that, that feature that you've put in. And what we came up with was pretty simple, but hasn't been done. And we have the ability on the Baracus to change the fin angle here. So in light winds, you can have your fin inline to the water flow, so minimal drag, maximal speed. But as you start to reach critical power levels, you can simply twist the fin a little bit in, and the fin is sucking the rail down more into the water. And the difference is really, really noticeable, how much extra power you can handle when you adjust the fin into the inboard position. The beauty is, if the wind drops, all you have to do is go in and quickly adjust the angle of the fin. You don't have to change your fins or change your board because you have a dedicated channel that is sucking power. So I do quite like this solution. You do have the benefit of the extra grip when you're powered, and still you have the efficiency in lighter winds.
Okay, so my next question, The Dalton is the only board in the range to use the spread toe carbon. Why is it not in the other two? If that is a premium big air board with all the bells and whistles, why can't you use the spread toe in the Dalton? And why is the Dalton better for using spread toe if it's not in the Baracus?
Because it looks nicer. You can't take one factor out of a board and attribute other things to it. No, you can't say, well, this board is great because it has basalt fiber. No, it's one of numerous factors that are working together to create the board as it is. Carbon, especially spread toe carbon, it has a wonderful ability to respond from flex. So given a certain weight on it, the amount it flexes might be consistent over all three boards, but the speed it responds to that flex is significantly faster. And that allows us to change the other dynamics. It allows us to change the constant curve rocker. It allows us to use a lighter grade of core. It needs less reinforcements with glass, etc., etc. So using the carbon does unlock other things. You know, a constant curve rocker means it's a piece of a circle, but it doesn't mean they all have the same circle, the same piece. So with the Dalton, we can afford to use a bit more rocker in the constant curve rocker, and the carbon is so lively that it brings it back to a normal feeling, and it's not slow through the water and sticky.
Okay, right, I'm going to ask you about the Monka. Now, this board is familiar to many, and it is probably your best known board of all time, really. It's got a legion of fans behind it. Now, it's evolved very gradually over the years. And what does this new one feel like on the water compared to the old one? And are there any gains in certain areas, but also at the same time losses in others? Or do you feel that, you know, everybody who loved the Monk in years previous, do you think that this is an upgrade on every front? And if so, what are those upgrades going to feel like on the water?
You know, when you've had a board with as many iterations as the Monka has, it gets harder and harder to improve it, because you've gone down, as a designer, I've gone down a lot of avenues already, and I know they're working or not working, and sometimes the changes are very, very small from year to year because they simply haven't found a way to improve it. But the introduction of the basalt fiber really opened a lot of doors for me in the way that I design it and the way that it can work. So if you've had a Monk in the past, you will recognize immediately the feeling of the Monk. It charges through chop, it's super comfortable, lively, playful. It makes you want to do things on the water, makes you want to turn, jump, lever. The newest version, the Monka here, it really does feel like a massive upgrade on the last one. The last model we had felt very good, but when you get onto the Monka, you go, wow, it feels turbocharged.
And at any expense of control?
I don't believe there is any area of the Monka that's worse than it was before. In fact, I think pretty much every aspect has been improved. The light wind performance, the grip, the strong wind performance, the feeling. I think the changes in construction really have upgraded everything without a cost.
And on to one of my last questions. Tell us about the new foot pad, because I've always struggled with foot packs. It's a very personal thing, but I really, really liked the new foot pack. I found it comfortable. I didn't find it buckled on the heel side edge. I found it secure, but not this kind of thing that I can't get out of in a hurry. So can you talk us through the changes in the new foot pad that you've made, and how you think they translate to actually using it on the water?
It's extremely difficult to design a footstrap system because you are effectively trying to make one shoe that fits the whole world, every size, plus with or without winter boots, or it's not easy at all. It's also with plastic moldings, and it's not a especially cheap operation either. So generally you get into a new design and you need to keep it for a few years bed in. And we've been doing this for a while now, so every time you have a chance to redesign it, you can hopefully fix the things from the past that you weren't happy with. And I do feel that we've come to a very good place now with the system. As you said, the density of the EVA is pretty much perfect now. It feels firm under your foot, but it's still soft. The grip on it is excellent. It doesn't hurt your feet in cold weather. It doesn't get slippery in warm weather. We've actually managed to reduce slightly the number of adjustments from the past, which makes it easier for the average person to set up. We still have the 4.5 adjustment on the board. You have the ducking angle adjustment on the board. We've gone to a split strap here, and this really means that whatever the angle of your foot, some people have very flat feet, some people have very angled feet. This really allows you to make sure that the foot is directly in contact with your foot no matter what. So as I said, it's maybe slightly less adjustments than we have had at some points in the past, but much easier to set up, and as you say, it feels really, really solid on the board. Makes you feel completely connected to the board.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would say about it is that, you know, you can't really tell here, just stood with me holding it, but the thing is crazy light. It's one of the lightest foot pads that I've ever had. And, you know, some of the big bulky ones, you pay all this money for a super lightweight board, and then you end up sort of lobbing a massive brick on it. But this thing's featherweight.
You know, EVA foam is effectively a bag to trap air. The foam itself is not doing anything. All it does is trap the air that you can then stand on and have the cushioning. So the way that you control that air is critical. And as you said, I think the weight of the board in its entirety is important. And not adding on 1 kilo in the foot pads is definitely optimal.
Yep. Right. Now, my last question, I'm going to read this from my phone again as well. Now, if personally you had 1 or 2 old boards that you really like and didn't really feel the need to upgrade your quiver, but you wanted to scratch an itch, what one board from the new range would you say is going to blow your socks off in a way that no other board from the old range could possibly do?
I think that's actually a fairly easy question to answer because we've never had anything like the Baracus in the range before. So if you're looking for some completely new experience, I would say try the Baracus. Try the 136 size Baracus with reasonable power in the kite and you will be surprised. Yeah. And if you have a woo, you might set yourself a new record.
That's exactly what I thought as well when I tested the range. The Baracus is like nothing you've done before, and it reminded me of the time that you first came out with the first original Monk, like 10, 12 years ago, which was just jaw-droppingly good compared to the rest of the industry. And I remember you giving me the Baracus and said, Mike, try this. If you don't like it, you're wrong. It's true. It's an absolutely phenomenal bit of kit. Not to take it away from the Monk or the Dalton, but the Baracus is something special. It really is. It's a new area of kiting that we've kind of grown into over the last 3 years, and the thing absolutely rips. So yeah, well done. Thank you. Okay, that's us done. We'll have, certainly in the UK, we'll have demos of these things floating around. So please get in touch, either your local retailer or direct to us at Shinn, and we'll get you sorted out. And for now, thank you, Mr. Shinn, and I will leave you to go and grab yourself a nice cup of coffee.
Good plan.